So with the Autumn Internationals done, let's have some fun. Let's look ahead to the Six Nations. How might starting 15s have changed based on the Autumn Internationals? Talk about some of the subs as well. And then link it to the British and Irish Lions, because I think that really is relevant now, because Andy Farrell is going to stop being Ireland head coach and be the British and Irish Lions head coach at the beginning of the Six Nations. He'll be reviewing all these Autumn Internationals and coming up with a long list of who are serious contenders in his head, who is on form. So we're going to form who I think is going to be the serious contenders, the long list, cut it down to a short list as well, get a bit ahead of ourselves because it's fun, and also based on these results, based on these internationals, what sort of team might we see in the summer as his first choice 23, shall we say. So loads of things to get into here. And also, just for a bonus, let's tack on the end a clip sent by the Rugby Paper podcast of Nemani Nadolo's top 4 wingers he's ever faced. They like sending us stuff so we can have a good look at it. So a big one today. So sit back, enjoy, let's get into it. And also thank you to the sponsor of all these November videos, Sports News Blitz, a great place to go for young aspiring writers, read their great sports content and podcasts. Really do recommend checking them out. So, first of all, before we get into it, let's just mention the vote you guys did on World Player of the Year. And you guys got it spot on. You said Peter Steph Toy to win, and then Wallace Atiti for the Breakthrough Player of the Year. So well done. You guys chose the winners that the experts chose. So shows you guys are experts too. And what do I know? I picked Eben Etzebeth. So please do keep participating in those votes. I will be coming back with that Steve Borthwick result in the next video probably. So let's get stuck into it. Try not to make this video too long, but there's so much good stuff to talk about. Let's talk about Ireland. Why not? Wasn't the slickest autumn for them. They finished very nicely on Fiji. Of course, they still have Australia to come, but that's not included in this video. But I think it's pretty clear what the starting team is going to be. Who are the other contenders out of the starting team that Andy Farrell will be thinking about for the Lions? And of course, he knows these guys really well. That could help because he knows all their strengths. He knows what they're like around camp, if they're fantastic trainers, motivators, but also he knows all their weaknesses as well. So it could work both ways. He's not going to want to appear have favouritism, but also he's not going to shy back. No, he's going to pick these players if he thinks they are the best. How many contenders? Well, absolutely loads. The starting 15, I think, is pretty much picking itself. Porter, Sheehan, Tadhg Furlong are still the starting front row. I don't think Bealham did enough to break through. I don't think Kelleher did enough to break through and take over from Sheehan if he's back fit. Healy, O'Toole, Tom Stewart, Gus McCarthy, I don't think they're getting close. But I do think Porter, Sheehan, Furlong, Bealham and Kelleher are all serious contenders, so they go on the long list for the Lions. Second row's a bit trickier, I guess. Joe McCarthy is going to be one of them because you need that bulk. He's annoying. Do you have Tadhg Beirne with him? Do you have James Ryan with him? Because it's not quite clear at 6, I'm going to stick with McCarthy, Ryan, Tadhg Beirne at 6. All of those 3 are Lions contenders, as is, I think, Peter O'Mahony. You've got to appreciate his experience, although he's kind of on the edge, I guess. Ryan Baird is an absolute athlete. He's going to be in Lions contention as well. And you've still got Kim Prendergast, Izuchukwu as well. So loads of combinations, but I think that would be their strongest one. Rounded off by Josh van der Fleer and Caelan Doris. And I think Jack Conan might come back into the mix, not to start maybe, but as a bench player. And I think he would be considered for the Lions because he's performed so well in the past. So loads of contenders in the pack. Then in the back line, Gibson Park, of course. Craig Casey, I think, has made a bit of a breakthrough. I think we saw that Conor Murray really has slowed down quite a lot. I don't think those two are in serious contention for the Lions, but please do disagree with me. So Gibson Park, of course. Who's going to be the starting 10 in the Six Nations? Well, I still think it's going to be Jack Crowley. Prendergast, Sam Prendergast is smooth. We can see he operates very smooth, like Sexton, right in the face of the opposition. Lovely options, really soft hands, nice kick, all of that. He's not a runner like Crowley. He's not a physical specimen like Crowley and Frawley, or as versatile. So it's kind of who do you want? I think it's going to be a bit more time for him. He probably will take the crown at some point, but Crowley for now. Crowley a contender, Frawley a contender because of his versatility. Maybe Prendergast will be a contender at the end of the Six Nations, but not now. Centres, well, goodness me, I'd be happy with any combination of Aki, Henshaw, Ringrose. For now, we'll go for the most powerful Aki and the quickest Ringrose. And Henshaw is, could be 12, could be 13, but all of them are Lions contenders, as are all the other starting backs. Lowe, they gave Hansen a lot of game time to get him back up to speed for the Six Nations. And Hugo Keenan. Shame we didn't see Calvin Nash, he's a really good winger as well. Jamie Osborne could be a dark horse breaking through, but I don't think he's a contender yet. So loads of Lions contenders. That's how I think they might line up for the Six Nations. Let me know if you agree. And a similar sort of story for Scotland. They put away Australia really nicely and they executed those attacks. And goodness me, when they get going, they are a sight to behold. All of the starting team, I think, probably, apart from Scott Cummings, are contenders. Maybe only one of the replacements, Jamie Ritchie, is a contender because of his experience, and he played so well against Australia. So I think it's pretty much as is. We can see the back three of Kinghorn, Graham and Van der Merwe has a perfect balance of skill, of size, of height, of nippiness. It really is great. They're well backed up by Carl Steyn, Carl Rowe, Aaron Reid I want to see more of. I want to see more of Hutchinson in the centres, but they're not breaking through. And because they're not getting as much game time, I don't think they're contenders for the long list for the Lions yet. White and Russell absolutely nailed on. They've got a class front row of Schoeman, Ashman and Fagerson, but not too much to back it up. But all three of those guys are contenders and all three could go on a tour. Schoeman and Fagerson especially are really good props. Ashman finding his feet, maybe in the line out a little wobbly, but he does seem to be a real athlete. Gilchrist and Cummings are a solid pairing, and maybe we'll see Johnny Gray coming back into the mix as well. And then Fagerson, Darge and Dempsey, I think, would be their go-to back row, but you could put Jamie Ritchie in at 6 or 7 as well. So really strong starting 15, maybe not too much depth, but all of those starters and Ritchie, definite contenders, maybe apart from Cummings. Maybe that's harsh. Let me know if they're all contenders. Then on to my team, England, and please let me know if you think I've been biased here. I could be, but this is how I see it. The pack that Borthwick, I think, is going for is a Genge, George, Stewart pack. Genge and Stewart scrummaged okay. Wasn't overly impressed with Genge elsewhere. George does his stuff. He's great in the line-out, etc. So pretty solid. Atoje seems to be favourite still, but I think he might mix it up and put in the athleticism of Chesham if he's back and have Martin on the bench. That's just my feeling, but no, 2 of those 3 and all of those 5 I think are to be contenders and whoever's on the bench. Coles, Ezekwe, I don't think come into the picture. They need more game time to impress, but I'm still not sure they'd make a Lions long list. Cunningham South looks to be the big running, the big tackling 6 that Borthwick likes, and because of that I'm sure he will take Farrell's fancy as that big physical guy, although inexperienced. Sam Underhill has easily been the best 7 in attack and defence and surely is a contender. Tom Curry's experience, I didn't know if based on this autumn you'd put him as a contender for the Lions, but based on his past I guess he still is a contender. And Ben Earl we see in attack is absolutely amazing, although he did make some mistakes in this autumn period, some missed tackles, some bad penalties, so not perfect, but maybe as an explosive sub he could be a man. And I do think there's some exiles for England that Farrell will definitely consider. His son, Owen Farrell, I think he has to think about him. I don't think he would take him if there are other similar alternatives, because there is going to be that thing of him not playing, in one of the 4 nations, of course being his son, but if he thought he was one of the best, he would take him. I don't know if he will, but he's definitely a contender. Same with Courtney Law, still doing well in France, and Jack Willis for Toulouse is still outstanding, so he would definitely consider those guys. Maybe Jack Willis the most considered of the lot. So that's how I see it for England, how they'd line up in the Six Nations and who are contenders for that long list for the Lions. And then finally on to Wales, and tell me if I'm being too harsh here, but as I see it, I only see 4 contenders. Dewey Lake, a strong contender at hooker, Jack Morgan as a carrying 7, Wainwright as an all-round 8, and Thomas Williams I see as a class 9. They really missed him when he got injured in the autumn. I don't see anyone else really breaking into this contenders list. This is the starting team I see. Thomas Lake and Griffin I think is pretty much nailed down. Interesting how Griffin got good games and poor games, but he doesn't play much for Bath. He needs to play more club rugby. I wonder if he'll go back to Wales at some point. I think he's signed on to Bath for a while, but I don't see anyone else breaking through into that starting team. Maybe Nicky Smith, I guess, but behind Lake, Elias, I don't think is great. Maybe Deal comes straight back in. Azarati is okay, but didn't help the scrum when he came on in the last game. And Thomas Francis could well come back from France to help out if they need him. I wonder if they'll make that call. In the second row, I think Dafford Jenkins comes straight back in. Adam Beard got injured and is just so-so anyway. Chris Schwinzer hasn't really had his breakthrough moment. So it's going to be one of these experienced guys, probably Rowlands alongside Jenkins. Both of them, Morgan Wainwright is easy in the back row. Then Thomas Williams. 10 is tricky Ben Thomas is a good playmaker, but he's being used at 12, so I see that continuing. Costello still doesn't happen for him. He does some great stuff, makes some mistakes. Don't know. Do they move on to Dan Edwards as a guy in the squad for the Six Nations? I think they probably should, but for now I think they stick with Gareth Anscombe. Nice and steady, good kicking, good passing, not going to do anything outstanding, but not going to make any howlers either. Then if Warren Gatland sticks with Ben Thomas and Max Llewellyn, if Warren Gatland's still there, I think he will be. You need a big winger. Mason Grady on one wing if he's fit again. I think Josh Adams definitely comes back into it. And probably Liam Williams, an all-changed back three. I think Dyer doesn't really have it for me. He's okay. Cameron Winnett is very skillful, but he's absolutely tiny. Wasn't too impressed with any of the others. Eddie James on the bench, maybe Watkin on the bench as well. But I think you do change the back three and he'll go back to that experience and then the size of Grady. So that's maybe how they might line up in the Six Nations. It might go a fair bit better if that was the case. So this is the long list as I see it. Serious contenders, not going to just list them all because I've spoken about them all already. So let's get straight into this short listing process. So if Andy Farrell takes 37 players like they did in South Africa, there's going to be these three loose heads because they're the only ones I chose as serious contenders. Porter, Schoeman and Genge might not be the strongest position actually for the Lions. Let me know if you agree. Hookers, I see it as a five-way fight. Lake is definitely going because he's so powerful. Sheehan's definitely going. So I think it's one of Kelleher, Ashman and George. It's a tricky one. Does George have that round-the-pitch explosiveness that Farrell might want from his hooker, considering he likes players like Sheehan and Kelleher, McCarthy now? Don't know. Maybe he'll go with what he knows and go Sheehan, Kelleher and Lake. Strong position, I think, there. Tight heads, got 4 on the list. I think it's fairly clear it'll be Furlong, Fagerson and Stewart for me. Beelum hasn't looked that great in this autumn period, and I think Stewart has come on leaps and bounds. So a bit of a dark horse. Didn't think I'll be picking Will Stewart for the Lions. Let me know if you think he's not of that quality. But from all the players on offer, I think these are the 3 best ones: Furlong, Fagerson and Stewart. Now, second row wise, he might go 4, he might go 5. But some of these players like Tyg Byrne, Ollie Chesham can play back row as well, which will help. On a Lions tour, versatility really helps your selection. So I think he'll take 5 and have Byrne and Chesham able to play 6, so that helps out the back row. So I think McCarthy goes as the enforcer, Byrne and probably Ryan with Gilchrist missing out, but maybe Ryan and Gilchrist switch around. Atoje I think still goes for his experience. He's not particularly agile anymore, but he still does good stuff, technically very good, a real leader, been a Lion before, will definitely help the youngsters. And then I think maybe Chesham goes over Martin because I see Chesham more as a back row and a second row rather than just a second row, which I see Martin as. So those 5 I think go. Now back row wise, that leaves me with 7 spots. I think Peter Amani drops out. I think it's 1 tour too many. Conan we haven't seen enough of. Darge, Dempsey and Ritchie, I'm not sure they make it. Maybe a bit harsh on one of them. Maybe Darge should make it. It's so competitive, of course. Curry, I don't think has had the performances. Laws has been out of the international game for a while, and if you don't need him, I don't think he goes. I was very close to picking one of Underhill or Willis, but I think Morgan takes it for me as a 7 over those 2, as a ball-carrying 7, as a big, strong 7. Wainwright, I think, misses out. We've got enough 8s in there. So the way I see it, Doris, the captain, goes, playing 6 and 8, which of course helps. Baird as well. Guy could step into second row, which would help. And a really rangy 6, excellent line-out option. That helps as well. You've got a couple of specialist 7s there in Van der Fleer and Morgan. That's why I don't think there's space for Darge, Underhill or Willis. So that's tough if you're a specialist 7. There's only really room for 2 of those, I think. And I think maybe Matt Fagerson goes as a guy who can play 6 and 8, incredibly dynamic. Now, if they're going to play a running game with the likes of Finn Russell at 10, I think he could be really, really good. And an enforcer, big guy, Cunningham South. I think Farrell might like him. Back row, so that is my back rowers. Let me know if you agree. That is so hotly contested. Out of the scrum halves, I think Thomas Williams drops out because he's playing for Wales and it's tough to look good playing for Wales. I think that's pretty much it. Gibson Park's obviously going to go. White's been ever present for Scotland and they've been playing so well. And I think Mitchell might come back into it for England and I think he will go as well. So those 3 scrum halves. Of the fly halves, because you've got Marcus Smith, Russell and Crowley, I don't think he takes Owen Farrell. If they're going to play a running game and if Russell's going to be his main man, which I think he will, then it doesn't really make sense having Russell and Farrell anyway. Marcus Smith's a running 10, as is Crowley, so it makes sense all 3 of those guys could play the same way and you could interchange them fine. And we can see that Marcus Smith can play different positions, Crowley as well potentially, so a bit of flexibility is. Now in the centres you could take 4, but it's such a strong area, I think you take 5. I'd hate to leave out Henshaw or Jones, something like that. Tui Plutu definitely goes, he's absolutely on fire, and he can play 12 and 13. Henshaw can play 12 and 13. Aki can as well, but probably more of a power 12. Ringrose is an out-and-out 13, but if we're taking 5, we need players that can cover the wing, and Ringrose can do that, and Jones can do that, and you can play the combinations that, they know each other, Tui Plutu and Jones, and then the Irish guys as well. So it's such a strong area. I think you take all 5, and you skimp a little bit on the back 3, so only 5 of them, but like I said, Jones will have to step up, Ringrose will have to step up, Henshaw could as well. Anyway, I think Lowe goes as one of the wingers. He's got such good boot on him. That really helps his case. Not as powerful as Van der Merwe, who is probably the guy who gets the chop because of the extra centre. Do you take Van der Merwe's power? Maybe. He doesn't have the all-round game of the others, I don't think. Darcy Graham's got those twinkling feet, that absolute pace. I think you've got to take him as an attacking weapon. And I think that Farrell will like Emmanuel Faye-Wabusu's ability to work in and around the ruck, which none of the others really do. So 3 different wingers, and then Keenan at 15 and Kinghorn, who can cover 15, wing and 10 as well. I think that will help. And they go over Furbank, they go over Frawley as a utility. So cutting back on the wingers, but I think you can cover it with the centres. So that is my 37 as I see it now. And straight out, let's just put it here. Here's a possible match day 23. Porter, Sheehan and Xander Fagerson. I think Fagerson goes in ahead of Furlong. He's such a good player these days. I think that's the way to go. Then the 2 Irish guys, I think, in the second row of McCarthy. The big guy, Byrne, a bit more of a ball player, can operate a bit wider. Maybe Matt Fagerson sneaking in at 6. I'm not sure about that one. Let me know what you think, because he's so explosive. He can have a really quick back row of Van der Fleer and Doris as well. The captains obviously can start at 8. Russell's going to be the guy at 10, probably alongside Gibson Park, but you could argue White might be a better partner. So only Tui Plutu has to start at 12 because he's in such great form, and I think he could have a great partnership with Ringrose, although you could argue maybe you should stick with him and Jones anyway. Then Low on one wing with a big boot. Maybe Graham instead. I'm not sure if that's the way to go. But anyway, Faye-Wabusu on the other wing, working off his wing in and around that ruck, like I said. And I think you go with Keenan at fullback, although Kinghorn would be a good guy there as well. Lake, Schumann and Furlong to come on. So very strong scrummaging front row to come on. Chesham to cover second row and 6. Earl as that explosive sub to come on at 7 or 8 to make the running game when the game breaks up. Then White, then Marcus Smith covering 10 and 15, and Henshaw covering 12 and 13. So is that the sort of thing that Andy Farrell might be thinking of right now? And believe me, he will be thinking about this. So those are the starting 15s as I see it for the Six Nations. This is where I think the thinking would be for Andy Farrell at the moment, but please do disagree because this is so subjective and a lot of fun. Pop all your squads and teams in the comments below. And as promised, a little treat as well, Nemani Nadolo's top 4 wingers he's ever faced. Anyway, guys, like, subscribe, that would be amazing, and I'll catch you next time. And here's Nadolo.
Nemani, can I bring you back to something you said? Ches and Colby in your top 4 wingers of the world, the world at the moment. Can I ask for your top 4? Ideally in order, but I know that's difficult to do.
No. So, number 1, because these are the guys I've played with and against, I guess.
Sure.
Number 1, Chris Ashton.
Wow. Okay.
A lot of people don't know. I just think he's the GOAT of try scoring. He just knows, like, watching him play again, playing with him at the end of my career, and I guess at the end of his career as well. I've always there's one person I would have loved to play alongside was him. So he'd be number 1. Cheslin would have to be number 2 up there. Number 3, I'd have to go Josh Tusova. So I've substituted. I've gone from speed and to size, and I guess the last one would have to be
that side or thighs.
Yeah. And Julian Xavier.
Nice.
They're the guys that, when you had to play against these guys. I remember, and I did play against all of them. There was always that feeling of playing Chris Ashton or I'm playing Josh Tusova. Josh Tusova and Ches and Colby were the same. They were just but they were both opposites. They were just as damaging. One was, and I'm not saying I was a big guy too, but I didn't want to tackle Josh. So I can tell you now, we played a few times and there was a bit of a gentleman's agreement. So thankfully he's Fijian. So We looked after each other on the rugby field. So, but then there was a guy on the inside, and he'd smash him, but then come to me and then just fall. So I think there's a clip out there somewhere about it.